The golden sunrise cast long shadows across the dusty plains of Sweetwater Creek, Texas. But for Penelope Summers, the dawning light brought only deeper darkness. She clutched her shawl tighter around her midsection, desperate to hide the growing evidence of her shame. 6 months pregnant and entirely alone, she had traveled west with nothing but a small carpetbag of belongings and a heart full of secrets. The year was 1876, and the small frontier town sprawled before her like a weathered painting. Penelope stepped off the stagecoach, her legs wobbling after the 3-day journey from St. Louis. No one in Sweetwater Creek knew her. No one knew about the baby growing inside her. No one knew about Edward, the banker's son who had promised her the world before disappearing with her innocence and her heart. "Last stop, madam," the driver called, tossing down her carpetbag. "Sweetwater Creek." Penelope's hand trembled as she reached for her bag. The town wasn't much a dusty main street lined with wooden buildings, a general store, a saloon, and what appeared to be a small hotel at the far end. It would have to do. She needed to find work quickly, save enough money, and then move on before her condition became impossible to conceal. "Need some help with that?" The deep voice startled her, and Penelope spun around to find herself face to face with a tall man in a worn leather vest, dusty boots, and a Stetson pulled low over his eyes. A cowboy, his skin bronzed from years under the relentless Texas sun. "No, thank you," she stammered, pulling her shawl tighter. "I can manage." The man tipped his hat slightly. "Suit yourself, madam. Name's Nathan Zimmerman, ranch foreman at the Triple Z outside of town." His eyes, a startling blue against his weathered skin, held her gaze for just a moment too long. Penelope felt her cheeks flush. "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Zimmerman. If you'll excuse me, I must find accommodations." As she turned to leave, a sudden wave of dizziness washed over her. The world tilted dangerously, and she felt herself falling. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. "Whoa there," Nathan said, concern evident in his voice. "When's the last time you ate something, miss?" "Summers. Penelope Summers," she whispered, mortified by her weakness. "And I'm perfectly fine, just tired from the journey." But Nathan's perceptive eyes had already noticed the way she protectively cradled her midsection, the slight swell visible as her shawl had slipped during her near fall. His expression softened, not with judgment but with something that made Penelope's heart skip a beat. "You're carrying precious cargo, Miss Summers," he said quietly, so only she could hear. His voice dropped even lower as he leaned in. "You're my treasure to protect now." Penelope stiffened. "I don't know what you're talking about, sir, and I certainly don't need your protection." Nathan straightened up, respecting her pride. "The widow Holcomb runs the boarding house at the end of the street. Tell her Nathan sent you. She's a good woman who minds her own business." Before Penelope could protest further, he lifted her carpetbag with one hand and offered his other arm. "Just to the boarding house, Miss Summers, then you'll be rid of me." Reluctantly, Penelope accepted his arm, acutely aware of the strength beneath his cotton shirt. This wasn't part of her plan, accepting help from a stranger, especially a man. But something about Nathan Zimmerman's quiet confidence made her feel, for the first time in months, that she wasn't completely alone. The widow Holcomb's boarding house was a neat 2-story building with freshly painted shutters and pots of geraniums on the porch. The woman herself was gray-haired and sharp-eyed, taking in Penelope's condition with a single glance. "Nathan," she acknowledged with a nod. "Who's your friend?" "Miss Penelope Summers, just arrived from back east, needs a room and some peace and quiet." Mrs. Holcomb's eyes softened. "I've got a room at the back of the house, nice and private with its own entrance. $3 a week, meals included." It was more than Penelope had hoped to pay, but the promise of privacy was worth it. "I can pay for 2 weeks," she said, reaching for the small purse tucked into her skirt pocket. "After that, I'll need to find work." Mrs. Holcomb exchanged a glance with Nathan. Actually, I could use some help with the cooking and cleaning. Nothing too strenuous, mind you. Penelope recognized charity when she heard it but was in no position to refuse. Thank you, Mrs. Holcomb. I'm a hard worker. I don't doubt it, the older woman said kindly. Nathan, help Miss Summers with her bag. I'll put on some coffee. Once they reached the small room at the back of the house, Nathan set down her carpet bag. The room was simple, but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small window overlooking a kitchen garden. Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Zimmerman, Penelope said formally, hoping he would leave. Instead, Nathan lingered at the doorway, his hat in his hands. Miss Summers, Sweetwater Creek isn't St. Louis, but folks here are decent. You don't have to hide. Penelope felt tears threatening. You don't understand. I understand more than you think, he said quietly. My sister was in a similar situation once. The father wasn't man enough to stand by her. And what happened to her? Penelope asked, unable to stop herself. Nathan's face darkened. She tried to handle it alone. Didn't end well. He seemed to shake off the memory. But that's not going to happen to you. Not here. Mr. Zimmerman, while I appreciate your concern, my situation is my own to manage. I've come here for a fresh start, not to be the subject of town gossip. Fair enough, he said, replacing his hat. I ride into town most Saturdays. If you need anything, Mrs. Holcomb knows how to reach me. After he left, Penelope sank onto the bed, one hand resting on her swollen belly. The baby kicked, as if reminding her of its presence. It's just you and me, little one, she whispered, allowing herself a moment of tenderness. And that's how it has to be. But even as she said the words, the memory of Nathan Zimmerman's kind eyes lingered in her mind. The following weeks settled into a routine. Penelope helped Mrs. Holcomb with the cooking and cleaning, grateful for the widow's tact. The older woman never asked questions about Penelope's past or her condition, simply showing her what needed to be done and leaving her to work at her own pace. The boarding house had 4 other residents, a retired schoolteacher named Miss Abigail, 2 railroad workers who were rarely present, and Dr. Samuel Parker, the town physician. None of them seemed particularly interested in Penelope's background, though she caught Dr. Parker watching her with professional concern on more than one occasion. True to his word, Nathan Zimmerman rode into town each Saturday. He never called at the boarding house directly, but Penelope often spotted him across the street, tipping his hat when their eyes met. Sometimes he would stop by the general store at the same time she was running errands for Mrs. Holcomb, offering to carry her packages or simply inquiring about her health. Each time, Penelope maintained her distance, responding politely but briefly to his questions. Yet she couldn't deny the flutter in her chest when she spotted his tall figure dismounting from his horse, or the way her eyes sought him out on the days he didn't appear. One hot afternoon in late July, nearly a month after her arrival, Penelope was hanging laundry in the backyard when a sharp pain caused her to double over. She gasped, clutching her stomach. Miss Summers! Dr. Parker appeared from around the corner of the house. Are you all right? Yes, she managed, straightening up with effort. Just a twinge. The doctor's kind eyes narrowed with concern. How far along are you? Penelope hesitated, but there was no point in denying the obvious. 7 months, I believe. Dr. Parker nodded. You should be taking it easier. No heavy lifting, no standing for long periods. I can't afford to take it easier, doctor. I need this position. Mrs. Holcomb is a reasonable woman. I'm sure she— Please, Penelope interrupted. I don't want special treatment. I'm perfectly capable of working. Dr. Parker sighed. At least let me examine you. My office is just down the street. We can go now, if you're willing. Reluctantly, Penelope agreed. The doctor's examination was brief but thorough, his manner professional and kind. "The baby seems healthy," he concluded, helping her sit up. "But you're working too hard. You need more rest, more nourishment." "I'm doing the best I can," Penelope said defensively. "I know you are," Dr. Parker said gently. "But you don't have to do it alone." Before she could respond, the door to the examination room burst open, and Nathan Zimmerman stood there, his face tight with worry. "Mrs. Holcomb said you were feeling poorly?" he said to Penelope, before nodding to the doctor. "Sam." "Nathan," Dr. Parker acknowledged. "Miss Summers is fine. Just needs to take better care of herself." "I told you. I'm perfectly capable," Penelope began, but another pain cut her off mid-sentence. Nathan was at her side in an instant, his strong hand supporting her elbow. "What can I do?" he asked the doctor. "Make sure she rests," Dr. Parker said, "and eats properly. She's too thin for a woman in her condition." Nathan nodded seriously. "I'll see to it." "Mr. Zimmerman," Penelope protested, "this is hardly your concern." "It became my concern the moment you nearly fainted in my arms at the stagecoach station," Nathan said firmly. "Now, are you going to walk back to Mrs. Holcomb's under your own power, or am I carrying you?" The absurdity of the question and the mental image it conjured nearly made Penelope laugh despite her discomfort. "I can walk. Thank you very much." Outside the doctor's office, the July sun beat down mercilessly. Nathan insisted on walking on the street side of the boardwalk, shielding Penelope from passing wagons and the worst of the dust. "You don't have to escort me," she said, though her steps were slow and she was grateful for his steadying hand on her elbow. "I know I don't have to," Nathan replied. "I want to." They walked in silence for a moment before he spoke again. "The Triple Z. My ranch, it's doing well. I've got a big house, too big for just one person. There's a room that gets the morning sun. It would be perfect for a nursery." Penelope stopped in her tracks, staring at him in disbelief. "Mr. Zimmerman, are you proposing something?" His tanned face flushed slightly. "Not exactly, not yet. Just thinking out loud about possibilities." "Possibilities?" Penelope echoed. "Mr. Zimmerman, I'm carrying another man's child, a man who abandoned me. You hardly know me." "I know enough," Nathan said quietly. "I know you're brave. I know you're proud. I know you're trying to do right by your child. That tells me everything important about your character." Penelope felt tears threatening again. Damn these pregnancy emotions. "You're being ridiculous. The town would talk." "Let them," Nathan shrugged. "Sweetwater Creek isn't as judgmental as you might think. People here understand that life is hard and everyone deserves a second chance." They had reached the boarding house. Penelope turned to face him, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. "Mr. Zimmerman." "Nathan," he corrected gently. "After all this time, you might as well use my Christian name." "Nathan," she conceded. "I appreciate your kindness, but I can't accept what you're suggesting. It wouldn't be fair to you." His blue eyes held hers steadily. "Why don't you let me decide what's fair to me?" Before she could formulate a response, the boarding house door opened and Mrs. Holcomb appeared. "There you are. I was getting worried. Come inside, girl. You look ready to drop." Grateful for the interruption, Penelope said a hasty goodbye to Nathan and allowed Mrs. Holcomb to usher her inside. "That man's sweet on you," the widow observed, once they were in the kitchen. "Has been since the day you arrived." "He's just being kind," Penelope protested. Mrs. Holcomb snorted. "I've known Nathan Zimmerman for 15 years. Kind, yes. Foolish, no. If he's showing interest in you, it's because he sees something worth cherishing." Penelope turned away, unwilling to let the older woman see the effect her words had. "It doesn't matter. I'm not in a position to..." "To what? Accept happiness when it's offered?" Mrs. Holcomb's voice softened. "Whatever happened before you came here, it doesn't define your future. Not unless you let it." That night, lying in her narrow bed, Penelope allowed herself to imagine just for a moment a different life. A life where she wasn't alone, where her child would have a father, where she would have a partner to share her burdens. Nathan's face floated in her mind, his kind eyes, his gentle hands, the way he looked at her, as if she were precious, not damaged. But dreams were dangerous things. She had learned that lesson the hard way with Edward. Better to rely on herself than risk her heart again. Better to face the future alone than trust in promises that might prove as substantial as morning mist. The baby kicked, a strong, insistent motion that made Penelope gasp. "I know, little one," she whispered, stroking her belly. "I know you're there. I won't let anything happen to you. I promise." It was a promise she intended to keep, no matter the cost to herself. August arrived with unrelenting heat. The air hung heavy and still, making even the simplest tasks exhausting. Penelope's condition was impossible to hide now, her belly round and prominent beneath her dresses. To her surprise, none of the boarders or townspeople she encountered seemed particularly scandalized. Dr. Parker checked on her regularly, and Mrs. Holcomb had reduced her duties to light cooking and mending. Nathan continued his Saturday visits to town, always finding a reason to stop by the boarding house. Sometimes he brought small gifts, fresh berries from the wild bushes near his ranch, a handkerchief he thought might match her eyes, a tiny wooden horse he had carved himself for the baby. Penelope accepted these offerings with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. She shouldn't encourage him, shouldn't allow these feelings to grow, and yet she found herself looking forward to his visits with an eagerness that frightened her. One particularly sweltering Saturday, Mrs. Holcomb announced that the church was holding a social gathering that evening, with ice cream and dancing in the town square. "It'll be cooler after sunset," the widow said. "Do you good to get out a bit?" Penelope hesitated. "I don't think." "Nathan will be there," Mrs. Holcomb added slyly. "Heard him tell Reverend Collins he wouldn't miss it." "That has nothing to do with my decision," Penelope protested, feeling her cheeks warm. "Of course not," Mrs. Holcomb agreed, not bothering to hide her smile. "But you're going all the same. I've set aside a blue dress that used to belong to my daughter. It should fit over your belly well enough." The dress, a simple cotton affair with tiny white flowers embroidered around the collar, was surprisingly flattering despite Penelope's advanced pregnancy. Mrs. Holcomb helped her arrange her hair, twisting the auburn locks into a simple knot at the nape of her neck. "There," the older woman said, stepping back to admire her handiwork. "Pretty as a picture." Penelope studied her reflection in the small mirror above the washstand. She hardly recognized herself. For the first time in months, she looked happy. There was color in her cheeks, a brightness in her eyes that had been missing since Edward's betrayal. The town square was already bustling when they arrived. Lanterns hung from the trees, casting a warm glow over the gathering. A small band played near the church steps, and several couples were dancing despite the heat. Children ran between the adults, their laughter carrying on the still evening air. "Penelope!" Nathan's voice reached her before she saw him. He appeared from the crowd, resplendent in a clean white shirt and dark waistcoat. His hair was damp and neatly combed, his face freshly shaved. "I was hoping you'd come." "Mrs. Holcomb was very persuasive," Penelope said, smiling despite herself. "Remind me to thank her," Nathan said, his eyes never leaving Penelope's face. "You look beautiful." Before she could respond, he was offering his arm. "Would you like some ice cream? The ladies of the church have been cranking the freezers all afternoon." The ice cream was cold and sweet, flavored with vanilla and the last of the spring strawberries. Penelope savored each spoonful, aware of Nathan watching her with undisguised pleasure. "What?" she asked, self-conscious under his gaze. "Nothing," he said, smiling. Just enjoying seeing you enjoy something. As the evening progressed, Nathan introduced her to various townspeople, the blacksmith and his wife, the owner of the general store, the station master. To Penelope's surprise, everyone was welcoming, treating her condition as unremarkable. Several of the women even offered advice about the baby, sharing stories of their own childbirths with a frankness that would have been scandalous back east. See? Nathan murmured, as they moved away from a particularly enthusiastic mother of five. I told you Sweetwater Creek isn't as judgmental as you feared. It seems you were right, Penelope admitted, though I still can't quite believe it. Out here, people understand that life doesn't always go as planned, Nathan said. What matters is how you handle the curves in the trail. The band struck up a lively tune, and several couples moved to the small area cleared for dancing. Nathan glanced at Penelope's swollen belly, then back to her face. Probably not a good idea, he said ruefully. Probably not, she agreed, though a part of her wished she could experience what it would be like to be held in his arms, to move together to the music. As if reading her thoughts, Nathan held out his hand. We could just sway a bit, on the edge of the dance floor. Nothing too strenuous. It was a bad idea. She knew it was a bad idea. But the night was magical, the music was sweet, and Nathan's eyes held a promise that made her heart ache with longing. Just for a moment, she conceded, placing her hand in his. Nathan led her to the edge of the dancing area, placing one hand respectfully at her waist while holding her other hand gently in his. They weren't really dancing, just swaying slightly to the music, but Penelope felt a sense of peace wash over her. Here, in this moment, with this man, she felt safe. I meant what I said before, Nathan said quietly, his lips close to her ear. About the room that would make a perfect nursery. Penelope stiffened slightly. Nathan, we've talked about this. No, we haven't. You've made assumptions about what I'm offering, but you haven't really listened. His voice was gentle but firm. I'm not proposing marriage, Penelope. Not yet. I'm proposing a solution to a practical problem. You need somewhere safe to have your baby. Somewhere with room for a growing child. The Triple Z has that. And what would I be to you? Your housekeeper? Your... She couldn't bring herself to say the word. My guest, Nathan said simply. For as long as you want to be. No obligations, no expectations. People would talk. People always talk. Let them. Penelope shook her head, torn between the temptation of his offer and the fear of depending on anyone but herself. I can't. Nathan didn't press the issue, just continued their gentle swaying motion, his hand warm and steady at her waist. But Penelope could feel something shift between them, a quiet resignation in his posture that made her heart ache. The evening ended too soon. Mrs. Holcomb was ready to head back to the boarding house, and Penelope's feet were beginning to swell from standing too long. Nathan insisted on walking them home, his hand protectively at Penelope's elbow as they navigated the darkened streets. At the boarding house door, Mrs. Holcomb tactfully excused herself, leaving Penelope alone with Nathan on the porch. Thank you for a lovely evening, Penelope said formally, suddenly shy. The pleasure was all mine, Nathan replied, his voice warm in the darkness. Penelope, Whatever he was about to say was cut off by a sharp gasp from Penelope as a pain, stronger than any before, seized her midsection. She clutched at the porch railing, her knuckles white. What is it? Nathan asked, alarm evident in his voice. Nothing, she managed, once the pain had passed. Just the baby moving. Nathan's face was skeptical in the lantern light. That didn't look like just movement. I'm fine, Penelope insisted. Really? But Nathan was already calling for Mrs. Holcomb. The widow appeared at the door, took one look at Penelope's face, and ushered her inside. Fetch Dr. Parker, she told Nathan, just to be safe. The doctor arrived quickly, his examination brief but thorough. False labor, he pronounced finally. Common at this stage. But you need to rest, Miss Summers. Complete bed rest for at least 2 days. I can't, Penelope protested. Mrs. Holcomb needs my help, and I can't afford to. Don't you worry about that, Mrs. Holcomb interrupted. Your health and the baby's come first. I'll cover any lost wages, Nathan said from the doorway, where he had been hovering anxiously. Absolutely not, Penelope said firmly. I won't accept charity. Nathan's expression hardened slightly. It's not charity, Penelope, it's care. There's a difference. Dr. Parker glanced between them, sensing the tension. Regardless of financial arrangements, Miss Summers needs rest. I'll check on her tomorrow. After the doctor left, Mrs. Holcomb helped Penelope change into her nightgown and settle into bed. Through the thin walls, Penelope could hear the widow speaking with Nathan in the kitchen. She's too proud for her own good, Mrs. Holcomb was saying. I know, Nathan replied, his voice a low rumble. But I can't force her to accept help. That girl needs someone to lean on, whether she admits it or not. I'm trying, Mrs. Holcomb. God knows I'm trying. Their voices faded as they moved further into the house. Penelope lay in the darkness, one hand resting on her stomach where the baby had settled into quiet movements. Nathan's words echoed in her mind. It's not charity, Penelope. It's care. There's a difference. Was there? Or was she just setting herself up for another heartbreak, another betrayal? Edward had promised to care for her too, once upon a time. His promises had proven as substantial as smoke. But Nathan wasn't Edward. She knew that, deep in her heart. Nathan was steady, reliable, honest in a way Edward had never been. When Nathan looked at her, he saw her not just a pretty face or a conquest, but a person with value and dignity. It was terrifying. The next morning, true to Dr. Parker's orders, Penelope remained in bed. Mrs. Holcomb brought her breakfast on a tray and informed her that Nathan had ridden back to the Triple Z but would return the following day. That man is determined to take care of you, the widow observed, straightening Penelope's blankets. You could do worse, you know. It's not that simple, Penelope sighed. Isn't it? Mrs. Holcomb raised an eyebrow. Seems to me you're the one making it complicated. Before Penelope could respond, a sharp knock at the front door drew the widow away. A few moments later, she returned with a letter. Just arrived on the morning stage, Mrs. Holcomb said, handing over the envelope. From St. Louis. Penelope's hands trembled as she recognized the handwriting, her sister, Rose. The only person from her old life who knew where she had gone. The letter was brief but devastating. Their parents had discovered Penelope's condition and her whereabouts. They were disowning her publicly, announcing to their social circle that their younger daughter had died of fever while visiting relatives. As far as St. Louis society was concerned, Penelope Summers no longer existed. Bad news? Mrs. Holcomb asked, noting Penelope's pale face. My family has declared me dead, Penelope said, her voice strangely calm. It's official now. I have no one. Mrs. Holcomb sat on the edge of the bed, her weathered hand covering Penelope's. That's not true, child. You have us now. Me, Dr. Parker. Nathan. We're your people now, if you'll have us. Tears spilled down Penelope's cheeks. Why? Why would you care about a fallen woman you barely know? Because that's what decent folks do, Mrs. Holcomb said simply. We see someone hurting. We help. No questions asked, no judgment passed. That afternoon, another pain seized Penelope, stronger than before. And another. By evening, Dr. Parker had been summoned again. This isn't false labor, he said gravely after examining her. The baby's coming, and it's coming now. About 2 weeks early, by my calculation. But it's too soon, Penelope protested, fear clutching at her heart. 2 weeks isn't so bad, Dr. Parker reassured her. The baby should be fine, but we need to get you comfortable. This could be a long night. Mrs. Holcomb immediately sprang into action, sending one of the railroad workers to fetch hot water and clean linens. And send someone for Nathan Zimmerman, she added, at the Triple Z. No, Penelope gasped, between contractions. Don't bother him with this. Hush, Mrs. Holcomb said firmly. That man would never forgive us if we didn't tell him. The labor was indeed long. Hours stretched into an eternity of pain as Penelope's body worked to bring new life into the world. Dr. Parker was calm and reassuring, Mrs. Holcomb a steady presence, wiping Penelope's brow and offering quiet encouragement. Sometime in the darkest hours of the night, when Penelope felt she couldn't bear another moment, the door to her room burst open, and Nathan stood there, his hair wild, his clothes disheveled, as if he had ridden hard through the night. Penelope, he breathed, crossing to her bedside in 2 long strides. You shouldn't be here, she managed, between pants. Not proper. Damn propriety, Nathan said, taking her hand. I'm not leaving you. Dr. Parker raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Mrs. Holcomb simply nodded, as if Nathan's presence was exactly what she had expected. With Nathan's strong hand to grip, Penelope found new strength. When Dr. Parker finally told her to push, she drew on reserves she didn't know she possessed. And then, with a final, tremendous effort, the baby slipped into the world, announcing its arrival with a strong, indignant cry. A girl, Dr. Parker announced, placing the squalling infant on Penelope's chest. A fine, healthy girl. Penelope stared down at the tiny face, perfect in every detail. A shock of dark hair just like Edward's, but the eyes when they briefly opened were all her own, a clear, bright green. She's beautiful, Nathan whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Just like her mother. Tears streamed down Penelope's face as she cradled her daughter. All the fear, all the shame, all the uncertainty of the past months melted away in the face of this miracle. Hello, little one, she murmured. I'm your mama. Nathan's hand was gentle on Penelope's shoulder. You did it, he said softly. You're amazing. In that moment, exhausted and exhilarated, Penelope allowed herself to lean into his touch, to accept the admiration and affection in his eyes without fear or reservation. Thank you for being here, she whispered. Thank you for not giving up on me. Nathan's smile was like the sunrise after the longest night. I never will, he promised. Not ever. And for the first time since Edward's betrayal, Penelope believed in a promise. The first weeks of motherhood passed in a blur of exhaustion and joy. Penelope named her daughter Hope, a testament to the future she was determined to build for them both. Mrs. Holcomb proved to be an invaluable source of advice and practical help, showing Penelope how to bathe the baby, how to ease her colic, how to establish a feeding schedule that allowed for at least some sleep. Nathan was a constant presence, riding into town daily now instead of just on Saturdays. He brought gifts for both mother and child, a beautiful handmade cradle for Hope, new dresses for Penelope that accommodated her nursing needs, fresh produce from his garden. More importantly, he brought his steady presence, his unwavering support. He would sit with Penelope for hours, listening to her fears and dreams, sharing stories of his own life, making her laugh when the night had been too long and the baby too fussy. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, the walls around Penelope's heart began to crumble. One crisp September evening, with Hope finally asleep in her cradle, Nathan invited Penelope for a short walk. Just around the garden, he promised. The fresh air will do you good. The night was clear, stars scattered across the velvet sky like diamonds. They walked in comfortable silence, Nathan's hand occasionally brushing against Penelope's, until they reached a small bench beneath an apple tree. I have something to ask you, Nathan said, once they were seated. And I want you to really think before you answer. Penelope felt her pulse quicken. All right. The offer of the Triple Z still stands. Nathan began, his voice steady despite the nervousness evident in his posture. But I'm changing the terms. I don't want you as my guest, Penelope. I want you as my wife. Penelope's breath caught in her throat. Nathan. Let me finish, he said gently. I know it's fast. I know you're still healing from what happened before. But I love you, Penelope. I love your strength, your courage, your fierce devotion to hope. I want to be a father to her, to raise her as my own. I want to build a life with you, if you'll have me. Tears filled Penelope's eyes. You don't know what you're asking. The scandal, the gossip. I don't care about any of that, Nathan interrupted. I care about you, about hope, about the family we could be together. What if... Penelope hesitated, voicing her deepest fear. What if you change your mind? What if you wake up one day and regret taking on another man's child? Nathan's face softened with understanding. Penelope, look at me. I'm not Edward. I don't make promises I don't intend to keep. When I say I want to be Hope's father, I mean it with every fiber of my being. When I say I love you, it's not just words. It's a vow. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring, a simple gold band with a modest diamond. I've been carrying this for weeks, waiting for the right moment. This is me, asking you to trust me, to trust us. Penelope stared at the ring, her heart pounding. This was everything she had feared, everything she had longed for. The chance to start again, to build something real and lasting. I'm afraid, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I know, Nathan said, taking her hand. Being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you don't let the fear stop you. In the distance, Hope began to cry, her wail carrying through the open window of Penelope's room. Think about it, Nathan said, closing her fingers around the ring. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. He walked her back to the house, kissed her gently on the forehead, and left her to tend to her daughter. Penelope cradled Hope close, inhaling the sweet baby scent of her as she considered Nathan's proposal. Could she do it? Could she open her heart again, take the risk of loving and being loved? Could she accept the gift that Nathan was offering not just to her, but to Hope? The baby quieted, her small hand curling around Penelope's finger with surprising strength. And in that moment, Penelope knew her answer. The next morning, she found Nathan where she knew he would be at the general store, purchasing supplies for the ranch. He looked up as she entered, Hope bundled securely in her arms. Good morning, he said cautiously, searching her face for clues to her decision. Penelope took a deep breath. Nathan Zimmerman, if your offer still stands, Hope and I would be honored to become your family. The joy that blazed across Nathan's face was like the sun breaking through clouds after a storm. He crossed the store in 3 long strides, gathering Penelope and Hope into a gentle embrace. You won't regret this, he promised, his voice thick with emotion. I'll spend every day making sure of it. They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the church, with Mrs. Holcomb, Dr. Parker, and half the town in attendance. Penelope wore a new dress of pale blue silk, with Hope in a matching bonnet, sound asleep in Mrs. Holcomb's arms throughout the service. I, Nathan, take you, Penelope, to be my lawfully wedded wife, Nathan said, his voice clear and confident as he placed the ring on her finger. To have and to hold. From this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. When Penelope repeated the vows, her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes never left Nathan's face. This was right. This was where she belonged. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Reverend Collins declared. Nathan, you may kiss your bride. Nathan's kiss was gentle but thorough, a promise and a commitment all in one. The assembled guests cheered, and even Hope, awakened by the noise, seemed to gurgle her approval. The Triple Z Ranch was everything Nathan had described, and more, a sprawling property with a comfortable two-story house, extensive pastures for the cattle, and breathtaking views of the surrounding hills. The room he had mentioned, with its eastern exposure and morning sunlight, made a perfect nursery for Hope, just as he had predicted. Life settled into a new rhythm, different from anything Penelope had experienced before. She learned to manage a ranch household, to cook for the cowboys Nathan employed, to ride a horse without fear. Nathan taught her to shoot a rifle, insisting that a woman alone on the frontier needed to be able to defend herself if necessary. And always, there was hope, growing stronger and more beautiful every day. She had Penelope's green eyes and fair skin, but her dark hair and something in the shape of her mouth reminded Penelope occasionally of Edward. Yet those reminders grew less painful with time, especially as Hope began to develop her own personality, stubborn, curious, and full of joy. Nathan was as good as his word, treating Hope as his own daughter in every way. He was the one who walked the floor with her when she was teething, who built her a tiny rocking chair when she was old enough to sit up, who taught her to name the stars as they sat on the porch on summer evenings. Watching them together, Penelope's heart would swell with gratitude and love. She had been so close to rejecting this happiness, so determined to face the future alone. If not for Nathan's persistence, his steady reassurance that she was worthy of love despite her past, she might never have known this contentment. On the eve of Hope's first birthday, Nathan found Penelope on the porch, watching the sunset paint the distant hills in shades of gold and purple. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, settling beside her on the swing. Penelope smiled at the nickname he had given her. "I was just thinking about how different things might have been." "Regrets?" he asked, a flicker of concern crossing his face. "No," she said firmly, taking his hand. "Gratitude. A year ago, I was so lost, so ashamed. And now?" "And now?" Nathan prompted, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Now I'm home," Penelope said simply. "With you and Hope. This is where I belong." Nathan's smile was tender as he leaned in to kiss her. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "An early anniversary present." He handed her a small velvet pouch. Inside was a delicate gold locket on a fine chain. When Penelope opened it, she found a tiny portrait of Hope on one side and Nathan on the other. "So you'll always have us close to your heart," Nathan explained, helping her fasten the chain around her neck. Tears pricked at Penelope's eyes. "It's beautiful. Thank you." Nathan's fingers lingered at the nape of her neck, a gentle caress that still, after nearly a year of marriage, sent shivers down her spine. "I have one more surprise," he said, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. "I spoke with Mrs. Holcomb last week. She's agreed to come stay with us for a few days, to look after Hope while I take you to San Antonio." Penelope's eyes widened. "San Antonio? But that's so far." 3 days by train," Nathan confirmed. "I've booked us a suite at the Menger Hotel. Private dining, a proper bathtub, no ranch chores, no midnight feedings. Just us." The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. They had never been apart from Hope for more than a few hours. "I don't know if I can leave her for that long," Penelope admitted. "Mrs. Holcomb raised 6 children of her own," Nathan reminded her. "Hope will be in good hands, and you and I, my love, need some time to remember that we're not just parents, we're husband and wife." The heat in his gaze made Penelope blush, even now. Their physical relationship had been a revelation to her. Nathan was a patient, generous lover, attuned to her needs and desires in a way Edward had never been. Still, with a new baby and the demands of the ranch, intimate moments had been scarce in recent months. "All right," she agreed, her heart quickening at the thought of uninterrupted time with her husband. "When do we leave?" "Monday," Nathan said, pulling her close. "So we'll be back in plenty of time for Hope's birthday." The trip to San Antonio was everything Nathan had promised. The train journey itself was a luxury, with comfortable sleeping compartments and dining cars serving elegant meals. Penelope, who had never traveled for pleasure before, marveled at the changing landscape outside their window, the rugged hills giving way to flatter, more cultivated lands as they approached the city. The Menger Hotel was a revelation. Founded in 1859, it was the finest establishment in Texas, with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and a famous bar modeled after the House of Lords pub in London. Their suite was spacious and elegant, with a separate sitting room and a bathroom featuring the promised bathtub, a rarity in the West. "Nathan, this must be costing a fortune," Penelope protested, as a bellboy arranged their luggage. "You're worth every penny," Nathan replied, tipping the young man generously. "Besides, the ranch had a good year. We can afford to celebrate." Once they were alone, Nathan drew Penelope into his arms. "No interruptions," he murmured, his lips finding the sensitive spot just below her ear. "No ranch hands knocking on the door with emergencies, no baby crying in the next room. Just us." Their lovemaking that afternoon was slow and sweet, a rediscovery of each other after months of hasty encounters snatched between responsibilities. Afterward, they lay tangled in the luxurious bedsheets, Penelope's head on Nathan's chest, his fingers trailing lazily through her unbound hair. "Happy?" he asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Mmm, Penelope sighed contentedly. "Very. Though I do miss Hope." "We'll telegraph Mrs. Holcomb tomorrow. Check that all's well," Nathan promised. "But for now, let's enjoy the peace." They spent 5 glorious days in San Antonio, exploring the city, dining in fine restaurants, attending a theatrical performance, and simply enjoying each other's company without the constant demands of ranch life. Penelope bought presents for Hope, a soft doll with a china face, a picture book about farm animals, a tiny silver bracelet she would grow into. On their last night, as they strolled along the riverwalk after dinner, Nathan pulled Penelope into a secluded alcove. "I have a confession to make," he said, his expression suddenly serious. Penelope felt a flutter of alarm. "What is it?" "When I first saw you, stepping off that stagecoach in Sweetwater Creek, trying so hard to hide your condition, do you know what I thought?" Penelope shook her head, uncertain where this was leading. "I thought, there she is, the woman I've been waiting for all my life." Nathan's voice was low, intense. "It wasn't pity, Penelope. It wasn't charity. It was recognition. My heart knew you before my head did." Tears filled Penelope's eyes. "Nathan, let me finish," he said gently. "When I said you were my treasure that day, I meant it. Everything that came after getting to know you, falling in love with you, becoming Hope's father, it's all been a gift. You're my treasure, Penelope. You and Hope. And I thank God every day that you had the courage to trust me, to let me love you." Penelope reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the beloved features. "I was so afraid," she admitted. "So sure that no good man would want me after what happened with Edward. But you never saw me as damaged or fallen. You saw me as whole." "Because you are," Nathan said simply. "You always were." They returned to the Triple Z to find Hope thriving under Mrs. Holcomb's care, though the little girl's squeal of delight when she saw her parents brought tears to Penelope's eyes. "Mama! Papa!" Hope cried, her small arms reaching for them both. Nathan scooped her up, tossing her gently in the air before pulling her close. "Did you miss us, sweetheart?" Miss," Hope agreed, planting a wet kiss on his cheek before leaning toward Penelope. "My darling girl," Penelope murmured, inhaling the sweet scent of her daughter's hair. "Mama missed you so much." "She's been an angel," Mrs. Holcomb reported. "Hardly any fussing at all. And she's learned a new word, horse. Can't keep her away from the stables." Nathan laughed. "Takes after her mother in that regard. Penelope's become quite the horsewoman this past year." The celebration for Hope's first birthday was a joyous affair, with friends from town making the journey to the ranch despite the October chill. Dr. Parker came bearing a small wooden rocking horse, expertly crafted by the local carpenter. Mrs. Holcomb presented Hope with a quilt she had been secretly piecing together for months, each square representing a different animal. Watching her daughter, surrounded by people who loved her, Penelope felt a sense of peace settle over her. This was what she had dreamed of but never thought possible: a true home, a loving husband, a child who would grow up knowing only acceptance and affection. That night, after the guests had departed and Hope was tucked into her crib, Nathan found Penelope in their bedroom, brushing out her hair before the mirror. "What are you thinking about with that serious expression?" he asked, coming to stand behind her, his hands resting lightly on her shoulders. Penelope met his eyes in the mirror. "I was thinking about how far I've come. A year ago, I was hiding from the world, convinced I'd never be happy again. And now—" "And now?" Nathan prompted, just as he had on the porch the night before their trip. Penelope turned to face him, rising to her feet. "And now I have everything I never dared to hope for. A home, a family, a husband who loves me for exactly who I am." Nathan's smile was tender as he drew her into his arms. "That's all I ever wanted, you know. From the moment I saw you, trying so hard to be invisible, I just wanted to show you how precious you are, how worthy of love." "You did," Penelope said simply. "You do. Every day." Outside their window, the Texas night spread vast and star-filled, a reminder of the endless possibilities that life could hold. But here, in the circle of Nathan's arms, Penelope had found all the possibilities she needed: the chance to love and be loved without fear or shame. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest, "for seeing me when I was trying to hide, for showing me that my past doesn't define my future." Nathan's arms tightened around her. "Always," he promised, "for as long as we both shall live." And in the quiet of their bedroom, with their daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room, Penelope finally allowed herself to believe, without reservation, that some treasures, once found, were never lost again. Hope grew into a spirited, curious child with her mother's green eyes and a gentle heart that reminded everyone of Nathan. By her third birthday, she was the undisputed queen of the Triple Z, adored by the ranch hands and indulged by her doting parents. The family expanded with the arrival of a son, Daniel, born 2 years after Nathan and Penelope's wedding. Unlike the circumstances of Hope's birth, Daniel came into the world surrounded by joy and anticipation, with Nathan pacing anxiously outside the bedroom door while Dr. Parker attended the delivery. "A boy!" Nathan had exclaimed when finally allowed to see his wife and newborn son. "Penelope, he's perfect. He looks just like you," Penelope had observed, watching as Nathan cradled the infant with practiced ease. "He has your eyes." Indeed, Daniel was his father's son in every way, from his blue eyes and sandy hair to his quiet, thoughtful demeanor. As he grew, he developed the same patient way with horses, the same steady presence that made Nathan such a respected figure in the community. Hope adored her little brother, appointing herself his protector and teacher. "I'm showing Danny the chickens," she would announce, leading the toddler by the hand toward the henhouse. "He needs to learn where eggs come from." Life on the Triple Z settled into a rhythm marked by the seasons and the children's milestones. Penelope, once so unsure of her place in the world, blossomed into a confident woman, respected throughout the county for her intelligence and compassion. She started a small school on the ranch for the children of the workers, teaching reading and arithmetic 3 mornings a week. Nathan's business prospered, allowing him to expand the ranch and improve the main house. He added a proper library for Penelope, filling the shelves with books ordered from catalogs and brought west by train. For the children, he built a playhouse near the main house, complete with tiny furniture and a front porch mimicking their own. The past receded like a tide, leaving only faint impressions on the shore of their lives. Hope knew, in an age-appropriate way, that Nathan had chosen to be her father, that he had loved her mother when she needed love most. The story was presented as a romance, a tale of rescue and devotion that Hope treasured as her personal fairy tale. "Tell me again how Papa found us," she would beg at bedtime, her green eyes wide with anticipation, and Penelope would smile, stroking her daughter's dark hair. "He saw me when I was trying to hide, sweetheart. He saw that I was carrying a treasure and he promised to protect us both. And he said you were his treasure too," Hope would add, knowing the story by heart. "That's right," Penelope would confirm. "And we've been his treasures ever since." On the eve of their 5th wedding anniversary, Nathan arranged a surprise for Penelope, a small gathering of their closest friends at the ranch, a renewal of their vows beneath the apple tree where he had first proposed. "5 years ago, I made you a promise," Nathan said, holding Penelope's hands in his as their friends and children looked on. "I promised to love you, to cherish you, to be a father to Hope. Today, I want to renew that promise and add to it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a new ring, a gold band studded with 3 small diamonds. "One for each of our children," he explained. "Hope, Daniel, and the new little one on the way." Penelope gasped, her free hand flying to her still flat stomach. "How did you know?" "I only just realized myself." Nathan's smile was tender. "You've been glowing for days, love, and you fell asleep at the dinner table last night, just like with Daniel." Laughter rippled through the assembled guests. Penelope felt a blush rise to her cheeks. Even as joy bloomed in her heart, another child, another blessing in a life already so full of them. "I love you, Nathan Zimmerman," she said, her voice clear and strong. "For seeing the woman I could be, when all I could see was the woman I had been. For giving me a home, a family, a place to belong. For making me your treasure." "Always," Nathan promised, slipping the new ring onto her finger alongside her wedding band. "You and our children, you're the greatest treasure a man could ask for." As the sun set over the Triple Z, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Penelope looked at the life she had built with Nathan, the home they had created, the children they were raising, the love that had transformed her from a frightened, shameful girl into a woman who knew her own worth. In the distance, Hope and Daniel chased fireflies across the yard, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Nathan's arm was warm around her waist, his presence as steady and reassuring as it had been from the first day he saw her stepping off that stagecoach. "Happy?" he asked, echoing the question he had asked so many times over the years. Penelope leaned into his embrace, her heart full to overflowing. "More than I ever dreamed possible," she answered truthfully, "more than I ever thought I deserved." Nathan's kiss was gentle but fervent, a promise renewed with each passing day. "You deserve every happiness, my love, every joy, every treasure this life has to offer." And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Penelope knew with absolute certainty that she had found the greatest treasure of all, not in gold or silver or precious stones, but in the love of a good man who had seen her true worth when she herself had forgotten it. In the years that followed, as their family grew and the Triple Z prospered, Penelope often thought back to that moment at the stagecoach station when a dusty cowboy had looked past her shame and seen only the treasure she carried. How close she had come to turning away from the happiness that awaited her. How fortunate she was to have found the courage to accept it. For in the end, love was the greatest act of courage, the willingness to be seen, to be known, to be treasured for exactly who you were. And in Nathan's love, Penelope had found not just safety or security, but the freedom to become her truest self, a woman worthy of love, a woman who was indeed a treasure beyond price.